My name is Jill Itzkowitz, and I'm with the League of Women Voters, and I'm the chair of the Voting and Election Committee. And thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Before we start, I was just going to give a little background on the League of Women Voters. The League was started over 100 years ago to fight for voting rights for women. And unfortunately, 100 years later, we're still trying and continuing to advocate for voting rights for all citizens. Although originally the organization was started with women citizens of a voting age, membership is now open to anyone age 16 and older. So I urge you to go on our state website and join us. We are a nonpartisan group that seeks to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Although we're nonpartisan, we do take positions on a wide range of issues, not only voting rights, but we also advocate for criminal justice, healthcare, the environment, education, and many other topics. We usually have one league day where we go to Dover and we lobby and discuss bills with our legislators. But due to COVID, we can't do this this year. So we decided to have several webinars and call it League Days 2021. And we've had 2 sessions so far, and we have a session for offshore wind power coming up, criminal justice fees and fines, and redistricting in April. So we hope you'll join us for those sessions. And just to remind you, this session is being recorded and will be posted on the state's league's website. So for today's session, we're going to review voting in Delaware. We're going to talk about the 2020 election. We're going to discuss election volunteer opportunities and talk about upcoming voting bills. We have some guests. Our first guest will be our election commissioner, Anthony Albence, who will discuss the 2020 elections. We'll also have members of the League of Women Voters who will discuss their experience as poll workers. And time permitting, we'll also discuss other volunteer opportunities. The final presentation will be done by myself and Dwayne Bensing from the ACLU, and we'll review upcoming voting bills and describe how you can help pass them. If you have any questions for our guests, please, and I hope you do, please type it into the chat, and Patty Christopher or Beverly Jackson will pose the questions to our speakers. And it's helpful with bandwidth if you stop your video. So I'll leave that up to you. So I'd like to introduce Anthony Albence, our election commissioner, who had a really tough year with all the changes and new things he had to implement. And I think you'd all agree it went very smoothly in Delaware as compared to other states. So we're very thankful for him. So Anthony, go for it.
Unmute, and I'm going to share a screen here and go to start slideshow. You guys can see that?
Yep.
Okay, good, great, thank you. And Jill, thanks a lot very much for inviting me. Thanks for the introduction and your kind words. It was a heck of a year. You know, I've been in elections a long time, and this is nothing like we ever saw. You know, well, none of us like we ever saw in our lives, I guess, in many ways. But you know, it's wonderful to have great partners like the League. You know, and I've had the pleasure of working with the League over the many years when I was the Newcastle County Director. You know, I've worked with Letty and many others and Jill, you know, over the years. And you all are a tremendous organization, great resource for the community for all you do. So thank you for that and for 100 years plus of dedication. So we will go over some updates and touch on some upcoming items. As Jill mentioned again, it was an amazing year, challenging year. But we survived and we made it all work, and now we're planning to get even better. And I'll talk about some enhancements we have underway or already accomplished, and then we'll go from there. So this first item, and this is actually something I'm going to get to in a little later towards the end of the presentation, but I wanted to let you know one of the items we're working on going, kind of an ongoing project really, is we are reformatting and enhancing all our websites. And when I say website now, because we have one of our initiatives was consolidating all our websites into a single department website. You know, since we are a single department of elections, we had county level sites, you know, legacy from when we were independent state agencies. We're doing a lot of enhancements and a lot of additional information and resources on the website. So I'm going to highlight that a little later. One of those enhancements is a lot of these graphics you're seeing, which we never had before. After each election, we produce a report called the AGP, Age Group and Party Report, which is really a statistical recap of the election. And traditionally, that's just been text, you know, a lot of text, a lot of numbers and tables and charts and just kind of in static format. But one of the enhancements we're using now with our site as part of our site upgrade is a lot of this graphical presentation. So that report being available in a much more attractive format. So we hope in digestible format. So I've got a few graphs I want to share with you from that report today. As you'll see top line, you'll see our total turnout high, which was the highest ever in the state. You know, we had 510, just under 510, about 509,000, 509,000 people voted, which was amazing, out of 730,000 registered. So again, gets your percentage voted right around just under 69%, the highest we've had. And you see the breakdown of how many people voted by party. Obviously, you know, just the demographics, a non-political statement, but the demographics are such that, you know, we have a lot more Democrats. That's our primary party affiliation in Delaware, certainly. So obviously you'd expect more Democrats to have voted, you know, by percentage. And then you see the age group distribution. Again, I mentioned that report is called Age Group and Party. So we're getting the party. Now we have the age group. You see, of course, you know, the numbers tend to be highest among those over 65. And then they peak again, 50 to 59. These trends are not that unexpected in terms of historical trends, but we do see the 21 to 29-year-olds that appears to be higher than in the past, though.
Anthony, can I interrupt you for a minute? Mm-hmm. We're seeing different slides. Like we're not seeing the slide you're talking about.
Which one are you seeing?
We see your participation summary as big, and off to the side, I see the. Oh,
okay. That shouldn't. Let me see here.
We're seeing the presenter mode. Someone is saying.
Let me see. I had it on. Took it off of presenter mode. Let me just take a look. Let me see if that's better. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let's just do it that way. There we go. Good, thank you. So yeah, so that kind of gives you the top line, okay, overview, and that's statewide numbers right there. Okay. Whoops, let me get that out of there. Sorry about that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about by county. And again, these are more those graphics that we can see. Again, you know, you see breakdown by party affiliation, superimposed on age group, and then you also see voting method. And again, not really that unexpected in some respects that, you know, those 65 and over, you see the method of voting pretty much evenly split, you know, between absentee or vote by mail and in person. You know, again, not really unexpected. You see those percentages lower for other age groups. Certainly, like the youngest tend to be the smallest, but then that grows. And again, 65 and over, again, probably as you might expect, taking advantage of that opportunity to vote absentee or by mail. You know, that's Kent County. Here's Newcastle. Again, trends are not that unexpected. They seem to follow some of the similar lines. Again, Newcastle, one thing, you see the 50 to 59 and over 65 very close to each other. And in fact, the 30 to 39 group close to each other. Distribution by age. And again, some of that, you know, plays into the demographics of each county too. What, you know, median age is, that sort of thing. So again, mirroring, again, what, you know, what you might expect. Again, by type, on the right, pretty much evenly split over 65, but again, you see the 50 to 59, you know, fairly healthy split between those two as well in terms of how they voted. And here's Sussex. Sussex, again, you know, again, we're, like we mentioned, we're talking about demographics. We know, you know, Sussex tends to be an area, at least certainly in recent years, a lot of retirees. So you certainly see that age breakdown higher down there. Obviously, their party affiliation breakdown by party, that differs by county. You know, Sussex has a much closer split, if you will, Democrats and Republicans than Kent or certainly than Newcastle. That's reflected in the turnout. Although you see their voting by type, again, is very similar as you get to over 65. Again, pretty much evenly split how they voted. So, you know, again, these tools and these graphics are something new that we've introduced, and we're going to be trying to use these as much as possible on the site as we continue to enhance it, just so you can see the data. And we have a ton of data, but, you know, making it digestible and making it easy to kind of process is most important as well, you know, just as important as having it. So these are methods we plan to use going forward to help illustrate things in a more kind of vibrant way, you know, if you will. So continuing our graphs, these, again, other ways we break down the data, and now we can do it graphically, is looking at it by rep district. Again, starting with Kent. And again, you know, we have the total voting method by method of top right for the county. And you see a couple representations on this chart. Each rep district, kind of how it played out. You know, rep district 11, you'll notice, for example, a much lower number, just because the way the districts are situated, you know, currently, is that rep district 11 is split between Newcastle and Kent. Just to give you a little insight into why that's, you know, lower. There's 4 of those EDs, the election districts, are in Newcastle. The remaining ones are in Kent, and that's still a fairly rural district, or not as highly developed as other areas. But then you get into the other areas like 28th, 29th. You know, you're getting into Dover area, so the more concentrated part of Kent County, a little more urbanized, if you will, area. And again, you see breakdowns of how voting occurred, you know, again, by type and by party method, just kind of giving some different representations of the same data. So it's a little more digestible. And we do this, again, as I said, by county. So that's Kent, just going in alphabetical order, and going to Newcastle. Now, obviously, many more rep districts in Newcastle. There's that number 11 I mentioned again being split. So a very small number. Those real high numbers you see, or those, I should say, those high peaks on the graph there, 9, 10, you know, 10, 9, you know, really the highest you see, that's again around your Middletown area. So that's the area you're seeing, you know, obviously significant growth, the most growth really in Newcastle County, certainly. So that, you know, certainly makes sense, you know. And then the ones that are peaking nearest to that, like the 15th rep, again, that gets down to Newcastle Bear, kind of into that area, to the left, the lower RDs, that's your city of Wilmington, 1, 2, 3, parts of 4. And then the further to the right you get, that's getting into your 18, 19, 20, Pike Creek area, Newark, 19 and 21, Newark proper, city of Newark, 22, 23, and then down to 26, 27 through more Bear, Glasgow area, just to give you an idea of where those places are and how they played out.
Anthony?
Yes.
Excuse me. There has been a question asked. Can someone go to the Department of Elections website and pull these slides up?
Yep, it's all on our website. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, these are all on our website. Thank you. And then here's Sussex. Rep District 14, again, just to give you a geographical kind of orientation, that's Rehoboth Beach area. You see that area, and the 20th Rep District, Lewis, Rehoboth, that area. Pretty high turnout, significant use of vote by mail. 38th Rep District, that is more south central, if you will, Sussex County. That gets into your west of Bethany area, big growth area. So you see that's the highest turnout. That's your Ocean View, Clarksville towards Millsboro, kind of that area. Again, a lot of new development, a lot of retirees in that area, as well as the 20th. And again, you see that voting method. Again, Sussex County, again, if you're looking at party affiliation, much more evenly split than, say, Newcastle. D's and R's, if you want to use that term again, pretty much evenly split. So again, all reflected in the demographics of how people voted. You certainly see by party on the lower right there that obviously party, and again, certainly we know this, by party affiliation, Democrats as a whole tend to vote by mail or absentee ballot in higher percentages than Republicans, who their majority preference seems to be voting at the polls. Certainly that played out, certainly in Sussex County. I know you guys are going to cover this later. I don't want to jump the gun, but I did put an update here on legislation, and they're color coded, meaning that I kind of color coded the municipal ones, and I color municipal related ones, and I color coded by blue the ones related to school board. Again, I know Jill and Dwayne will be covering this, so I just kind of use this as a point of reference. The big ones, of course, you'll be hitting the constitutional amendment about eliminating limitations on voting by absentee ballot. But one of the reasons I put this on here is that I wanted to highlight, some of the items that you may not be covering, that are a little more kind of the routine bills, if you will, just as information, the municipal ones. The reason I put this on there, just so everybody knows, and I know this is a very informed group, so I apologize if I'm repeating something people know, but by Delaware law, municipal elections are administered by the municipality. Each municipality, by Delaware charter, by Delaware code, is mandated to have a municipal board of elections, and they're the ones that actually run the election. Those are people who are selected, they are volunteer, sign up, whatever method they use, and are appointed to be the board of elections to administer their municipal elections. We provide the support to them, obviously the equipment, materials, all that sort of thing, but they ultimately govern how their elections run. And it's really based on their charter. The provisions of the municipal charter include everything about the municipality, from its boundaries, the offices, that mayor, council, how that's all situated, but also talks about elections and how elections are run, and eligibility, and when they're held, that sort of thing. So these charter provisions are kind of as I say, routine, and I don't mean that in any way to diminish the importance of them, but just to say that these things happen certainly every cycle. By Delaware law, the charter must be amended by the municipality by whatever means that they locally require to enact a charter change. And then the General Assembly must approve it as well, anytime there's a charter change. Again, these are pretty standard pieces of legislation. Now, the Seaford one, just to give you an example, that will one of the pieces in there, in addition to some housekeeping rules, ensuring that their charters are consistent with state law, for example, one change in there is that this would move Seaford to using the state's voter registration system as the requirement to register to vote. Currently, there are 57 municipalities in Delaware, and currently there are 11, and if this passes from through Seaford, 12 that would actually use the state's voter registration system as the means to qualify a municipal resident to vote. The other ones have local registration, however that's defined in their charter. And so then essentially they register with the municipality and they keep the list of registered voters. Some municipalities, again, especially the Sussex County, beach towns, may have provisions in their charter to allow non-residents to vote, property owners, all those sorts of things. And that's all under the purview of the charter, and that's their authority to do that. One thing that I highlighted at the bottom of this list in gray, again, I just wanted to mention, because again, it's something that's, may not be the highest profile item right now, but it's interesting. You may have heard about this, that there's likely going to be legislation coming out that would eliminate that local voter registration with the municipality requirement. In other words, everyone who is registered with the state would be qualified to vote in municipal elections. So that's something that's most likely going to be introduced. So that would be an interesting, change. And, of course, like I mentioned, we have 11, possibly with Seaford 12 municipalities with whom we work, and we have a whole process that we've developed over the years to work with them. We have very close communication with the municipality office, how we work with them to get that list of registered voters confirmed based on what they, information they relay to us, and we make sure we update our system accordingly and essentially produce the poll list that you have on election day for them. So very interesting. So again, that's kind of behind the scenes stuff, maybe not as high profile, but certainly important and something that, we work on an ongoing basis. With the municipalities, 20, like I said, there are 57 in the state, 25 of them are in Sussex, so they have the bulk of them. Not all municipalities, again, depending on their situation, have elections every year. They may not have a contest, but same amount of preparation, same amount of work goes into that to prepare municipal elections, just on a smaller scale, obviously, than the other elections. Again, other bills highlighted at the top, you may be covering them, Jill and Dwayne may be covering those. These are bills just to date that have been, introduced. Automatic voter registration, again, just a quick highlight on that. Certainly, we all know about our integration with DMV. Delaware was really the first in the nation to have the seamless integration with DMV. This would modify that, this piece of legislation, in that those not currently registered, they wouldn't be offered that opportunity at DMV per se. They would not be offered it in the course of their transaction at DMV, the opportunity to register to vote. It would occur automatically. They would be registered and they would have no party affiliation assigned. We would then follow up, we meaning elections would follow up with those individuals with a mailing, giving them the opportunity to confirm a party affiliation and also to change any information, update information if they need to make a correction. And, if they wish to cancel their registration, because that's something we have to always offer by law, is an opportunity to decline to register whenever a registration opportunity is offered. And then there are other provisions in that bill. For example, if the individual doesn't affiliate with a party based on that mailing and they wish to do so on election day, if they wish to vote in a primary, again, being that we're a closed primary state, only Democrats and Republicans able to vote in their respective primary. There is a means in that bill for those folks to choose a party on election day, just those individuals, not anyone else already registered. So I just wanted to highlight a little bit more on that one, but I won't go any more into legislation. Certainly I don't want to step on anyone's later presentation, but the municipalities, I just wanted to dive into a little bit because it's fascinating, and it's one of those areas that we do that I think a lot of people don't really know a whole lot about, but it's very important, and it has a lot of interesting dynamics on that.
Anthony,
Yes. Mhm.
there's a question that if
Mhm.
municipalities use state voter registration, how would out-of-state property owners be handled?
That is defined in the municipal charter. The municipality, if they permit that in their charter, they would still have a provision to do that. This bill doesn't eliminate that. The municipality would have a procedure that they maintain. That probably essentially wouldn't change from the way it is handled now. They would essentially maintain a list of those individuals who would have to be qualified to vote because they wouldn't be on the voter registration rolls. So that would pretty much be the same. So it wouldn't change as long as it's permitted by their charter. Mhm. And again, yeah, you see that pretty much in Sussex County, in the beach towns, although some of the inland towns too, have had that on their charter. And certainly nowadays, more people are, as I mentioned earlier, retiring or getting a second home or primary home down there. And the development's moving more inland, away from just the shore, the coast per se. So, okay. Let's talk a little bit just briefly about I mentioned this at the top about the Consolidated Elections website. We're really excited about this. We have, this has been kind of a long-term project for us. We've consolidated all the older legacy county office sites into the single elections.delaware.gov site. We have a lot of enhancements to the site. Really, the key benefit is common format and layout of all information statewide, and it is adding a lot of information. We have a new, and I'm going to highlight these in some slides coming up. We usually just have an election year calendar during the years of the federal, the big elections, but we're going to do an election calendar. We have one up for this year. Again, it's rather brief compared to the normal election year calendar, but something we're going to do every year just so that we have that as a reference. We have centralized school elections information page, school board and school referenda. Again, we're doing a lot of enhancements for municipal election information. You'll see that in a minute. And then we're also working on how we report the school board results, school election results, I should say, where we're going to have an interface on our page to report them in a similar format to the regular election results. And again, so they're just centralized in one place. And in the past, you may have had to go to a county site or, to see that, and it may have been a different format, not exactly uniform. And then we're just completely ongoing site review and improvements, constantly reviewing it, enhancing it, changing out information as things change, and as we add more tools. So let's look at some of what the site looks like. So again, and I'm sorry for the small print, just try to capture the whole page. This again, it continues to evolve on our site. The public notices piece on the top left is a lot of the new consolidated info. The elections data, you can see my cursor. That's where you see a lot of the results, including some of the graphical results, that I mentioned earlier. And again, we just try to populate as much information out there as we can. So it's exciting. I think it's something we've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm really excited to see us getting there. But again, it's like everything; it's a work in progress. It's constantly, evolving. Calendars. I'll just point that out. That's where I mentioned like the non-election year calendar, if you will. I mean, I shouldn't say non-election, we have elections all the time. The non-federal election year calendar that I mentioned earlier, a lot of these information up here. This is just an announcement about the centralized site. But municipal and the school board, we have information right here about Smyrna school districts having a referendum, coming up, for example. So again, yeah, just centralizing everything in one way. We will eventually, when the resources are available from our partner agency in the state that really works with us. We have our own IT folks, but there's an agency in the state, Government Information Center, that does a lot on the website designs. We're going to be updating the site kind of appearance to what they call this newest CLF, common look and feel, for the state sites. And we're in process to do that, kind of like the governor's site, things like that. That's kind of the next generation of all the state sites, and we'll be moving to that look as soon as they can accommodate us. There's been a lot of course, resources for the COVID-related items that has been needed, the resources of the agency GIC that does that, but they're going to be getting to us very soon. School board, here's that consolidated site information. Again, all the information's in common format by district. You'll see when you click on any of these links, you will see information on the districts that are up, which nominating districts have races, the polling places, all that information as soon as it's confirmed and everything is finalized will be listed on there. All the information about school boards, again, in one place. Here's part of that non-election year calendar, non-federal election year calendar. I keep saying non-election year. Obviously, there's a lot of elections. Look at the calendar. This is something new we've also done now as part of our enhancement. We've created a consolidated municipal elections calendar for the state that has all the election dates, all of the sites, all of the URLs for each of the county, each of the municipalities. We update it if their election is canceled, if they don't have a race, that sort of thing. But it gives folks an opportunity to move right over to that municipality. If they don't know what their municipal website is, what they live in a municipality, you know, that sort of thing. Again, I know this is second nature to this group, so I apologize for saying something everybody already knows. Question we do get, especially with more discussion about municipal elections, just so everybody knows, and I know everyone pretty much does, because many of you, like me, live in the city of Wilmington. City of Wilmington elections, of course, are integrated with the statewide elections. And that's been that way for many, many years, more than really 50 years now. Wilmington is the only municipality, you know, that is the case, that they're completely integrated with us. We manage everything. Although candidates file with us for the municipal, for mayors, president of city council, they're on the standard ballot, as you know, from voting. So, but that's the only municipality in Delaware that applies to. Everyone else has a distinct election.
Anthony?
Yes.
Excuse me for a second. First, there was a thank you that it was much easier to find the municipality elections this year on the website. So that was a thank you. But there's a question that I'm interested in the redistricting efforts and found the current maps for the districts and the past ones on the website. There is an overview map of the current districts, but not the most recently superseded. Would it be possible to add an overview map of the most recently superseded districts for comparison?
Okay, now the ones that we have online are the most current ones that we have. In terms of when you say superseded, I'm sure, just to be sure what you meant by that, I'm sorry. But we have the ones we have currently are the ones that are in effect now, I should say, through the next redistricting.
I'll see if I'll chat with her and see what she says.
Okay, no problem.
Wait a minute, she says the ones from the last census are there too.
Okay. Well, what we have out is everything that's been available. That's everything that was produced at the time of redistricting. So, and I'll double check, but everything we have on the site should be everything we have available. Everything that was produced and that was published. So I'll check just to be sure, but everything should be out there. That part of the site, we carried all that over from the county sites. That was actually centralized even before this, you know, behind the scenes, but I'll make sure to check that out to be sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Here's more municipalities, by the way. This is kind of the second piece. The elections calendar is what I just referenced earlier, what we were just looking at. But here's, sorry about that. Here is what the other piece of that looks like. So we have a listing here of all the municipalities. We have links to their website and charter, so you can get that in one stop. We have, again, their election date. And again, this is upcoming ones, as well as some prior ones. But you'll see these are alphabetical, whereas the other ones were chronological dates. And we also have links to whatever information the municipality provides. They are required to provide us information like their board and the names of the board members, copies of their notice of election and their candidate solicitation. So as soon as we get those, we put them up there so you have a reference. They are primarily required to put that on their website and to post it in their municipality, but they are required to provide us a copy of it. So just as a service, as part of this enhancement, we are centralizing them and putting them out there in one place. So anything we have, we'll put out there for you. And again, we have those links back to the municipality. So for those, folks can reference them. Okay.
Anthony, since Wilmington is the only municipality to be fully integrated into the system, and do you know how that was decided or the history of that development?
It was, like I said, it was many years ago. I believe it was over 50 years ago, and it was just enacted by the General Assembly. Since the General Assembly ultimately, rules on the municipal level. I mean, municipalities, like I said, they have a charter, but then any changes to the charter ultimately approved by the General Assembly. So this was legislation passed many years ago. Like I said, my understanding is more than 50 years ago or at this point. And just in recent times, it's always been integrated. Even when we were the distinct county departments, if you will, of elections, all state agencies still, but county departments, we used to call them. It was always integrated in Newcastle. Yeah. So we, like I said, we manage historically everything for that. It's never been independent, at least not in recent decades at all. And then this is again our social media. We do have we have a good presence on social media. We have Facebook. We have the county offices have historically had Facebook. We have just started one centrally for elections. We're still going to have the local ones because sometimes there's local items that need to be published by social media, but we'll be centralizing a lot of the postings across all the platforms. But again, go to our social media, go to our website. Again, we try to push as much information out there as possible to let folks know what's happening. And again, that website is a work in progress, but we're excited about the direction we're going with that because we want to get as much info out there as easily as possible to be accessed. So, okay.
Anthony, I had a question back to this statistics. Do you know how many people used the Dropbox?
There were several thousand that used it.
Oh, okay. It wasn't that much. Okay. And do you know how many, did you receive ballots late after deadline or?
We did. We had about roughly, I don't have the exact number, apologize, but about 300, not many.
Okay, good.
All things considered. We had over 191,000 requests for the general election and about 63, just over 163, I think 591, if I remember the number correctly, received on time. So very, very few. Actually. Okay,
good.
Very few. People really, got, I think people were very cognizant of that. And, one of the things I'll just mention briefly, I don't want to take too much time, cognizant of is that we know there was a lot of information, obviously, in the media about the Postal Service this past election. We work really closely with the Postal Service on a couple levels. Here in Delaware, every region, the Postal Service has various operating regions in the country that handle, all sorts of aspects of operations. And each of them have an elections mail specialist or an elections point person. And I've, historically worked with our point person. And historically, we've been with South Jersey and Delaware have been kind of the postal district. So we have a great representative there who I work with, and phenomenal relationship, excellent. We made all sorts of arrangements to go and pick up mail at the plant. Plant meaning Hare's Corner, or to have deliveries made on election day to our offices to get as many ballots in as possible. Great partnership locally. It's all I can say. Phenomenal. Just a side note, for our National Association of Elections Officials, which it's called the Election Center for short. I actually chair the Postal Committee or Postal Task Force, so we liaison with the Postal Service nationally, too, in DC. And we've got some really great staff down there at senior levels who are very, very focused on election mail, and a lot of people who really are focused on the importance of it. So I just I know there's a lot out there about the Postal Service, and I can't certainly comment on everything that's out there, but I just wanted to relay to folks here, at least locally, to know that we have a great relationship with the Postal Service and great local and regional people as well working on it, who share the importance, share the belief of the importance of election mail. So I just want folks to know that they really did go above and beyond to get things to get things done. And frankly, you know, we're in a much better position than a lot of other areas of the country. We're the primary, in addition to the staff, we're very fortunate that we have a processing plant here in Delaware, and that we have a couple other ones close by. So this area's mail, you know, service is generally, I mean, I know there's always challenges, great, certainly, but at least for election mail, we haven't seen some of the challenges other areas of the country have seen, where their mail may be transported hundreds of miles, you know, away before it, you know, maybe comes back for delivery, which introduces a lot of challenges. So just always like to mention that, you know, we've had a positive experience overall, you know.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
And thank you for your presentation.
My pleasure.
Before you go.
Oh, no, I'm right here. I am right here. I'm just going to back out of the
Okay.
presentation there so you can see me again.
Okay.
There we go.
2 questions. One is where to find the election result graphs on the website, and
Yeah.
also how to find the elections department on Facebook, on your social media sites.
Right. Okay. Well, there is on our elections.delaware.gov, of course, is the main elections website. And if you look there, you have under election results, you will see that report, like I said, technically it's called the AGP report, the Age Group and Party report. But if you look under election results, you will see that. And also it's available under information. If you look under information, that's one of the links on the main page. You'll see election results, and we have them. We have actually, if you're interested, we have election results all the way back, not complete, but all the way back to 1940 on our website. We have some other ones that we're hoping to also add to the site. We have some older paper records. Believe it or not, one of our offices in Carvel, we finally we were on the list to get new carpeting and all the office. Long story short, we had to move a lot of stuff around, and we actually found you'll love this, being election geeks like me, if you may, I might use that term, results of like a 1952 and 56 elections on carbon paper, typed carbon paper. So it was very fragile, very fragile. So we're going to try to scan some of that in that we don't have in, but we didn't even realize it was buried underneath something else for years. So, but we're trying to enhance as much of those election results so people don't have to go to like the state archives, although they're there, so you can see it on our site. But yeah, if you go to our site, yeah, look under election results. You'll be able to find anything you'd like, and if you don't see it, email us, let us know. There's links on the social media sites. You'll see on our office contact information, you'll see information about the agency and the offices. There'll be information on there about the social media links. And if you just do a search on Facebook, Delaware Elections, we're the first to come up. We're all certified official sites with the check marks and everything. So we'll come right up and you can link right to us. And like I said, our sites, we try to have our offices make sure to post everything, candidate filings, anything of that nature, important deadlines, we know people get information different methods. So try to get it out to multiple channels.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, now we're going to go to the second part of our presentation, and we're going to have some discussion and of poll workers. We have some league members and others who are experienced poll workers. So we're going to hear from Kay Elizabeth, Maren Bertelsen, and Liz Carlisle. So I think Kay's going to start.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here. When I started thinking about my experience as a poll worker, I've been a poll worker in Delaware 20 to 30 years. My mother got me, she was the springboard into it. My mother was politically active in her home state of Virginia. Her father got her into politics. So I'm just looking at, I'm experienced. I've been in 5 different polling places, predominantly Downs, First Presbyterian, and George Wilson Center. But back in the day, it was in the Christiana Towers. One thing that always was striking to me, the voters would come in and say, "Thank you for volunteering." And I would say to them, "Well, we're not volunteers. We are actually paid to be here." Everyone was surprised about that. And I said, "You too can be a poll worker." It was a long and, sordid history at many elections. My mother would be the inspector, the one in charge, and my sister would be there, and I. So 3 of us would be the half of the polling team usually. We would be there from 6 in the morning until 8:30 at night, and that's a long day. We would work as a team, and happily so, usually bringing food to share and taking breaks. I noticed over the years, a lot of the workers were aging, and some were struggling with their duties. And we tried to encourage some young people to become poll workers, and that has taken off some in the recent past. We always had an issue, it seemed like, being at George Wilson and the Christiana Towers, and maybe even on First Presbyterian, trying to establish residency for the UD students. That was always an issue, residency, and establishing their residency. It was a very positive and fun day for me, because I got to see all my neighbors that I never saw, typically day in and day out. And I really have enjoyed being a poll worker. And of course, this last election was huge, and glad to be a part of that, and felt like things ran smoothly. And when I hear, the people at large saying this was a rigged election, I know what we do, the little worker bees, we in no way can rig that election. And so I felt being up close and personal with the process, that I could say we did our job, and we did it faithfully. I don't know what to say. It was a really good, I will continue on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Liz or Maren, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, this is Liz, and I do have a question for Kay. Kay, 30 years is a long time, and I'm sure the process evolved a great deal. How did you see it change from when you first started? And you've worked all levels, right? I mean, you've worked school board elections, you've worked primaries, you've worked general, you've worked locals. So how did you see things change? Because it used to be totally manual and paper driven, and now it's electronic. I'd really appreciate some perspective on that.
Well, yes, back in the day, we got this very thick poll book of everybody's names and addresses, and we would divide it up into 3 separate what do they call them? 3-ring notebook binders, and 3 different people would have, A to H, whatever it was. And so, we had 3 lines and people coming up, but depending on your last name. And one of the funny things, and we did it every single time we forgot, we had to make a little sign that said A through whatever H it was, just put at the edge of the table to indicate which line the people should get in. And of course, now with the electronic poll book, we don't have to do that. I do want to make a comment that the state-run elections, and I'm not trying to rag on Newark, but they were much more smoothly run than the municipal elections. There were a lot of snafus with the municipal elections. So I think other Liz than the poll book, nothing comes to mind, but I'm a person who doesn't have great recall.
Okay. Well, I came to the league in 2019 because I wanted to get involved in the elections. I had been voting in Delaware for 30 years, but I had never done I'd never worked at the polls. And I just knew it was going to be a really difficult, contentious election year. And I wanted to get involved. I wanted to assure that people had an opportunity to vote and that voting rights were exercised. So, and I got involved. First, I joined Jill's election committee. And then I did some work with Kim Wells on the Vote 411 site. And I want to throw in a plug for that because that's an amazing resource, which has helped me a great deal in the past, an online election guide, which, presented the platforms of all of the candidates at all levels side by side. So you could make an informed decision. And for some of the local elections, I really needed that information. So that was really, really helpful to me. And then I heard somewhere along the line that they were having a really hard time recruiting poll workers because people were afraid to come out for the pandemic and to go into a public place. So I, sort of weighed it in my mind, and I figured that this was going to be, these polling places were going to be run by the state elections committee. So I thought that I could pretty well count on them to implement safeguards that would keep everyone safe. So I signed up, and I was very, very lucky. I worked both the primary and the general election, and I really didn't know what to expect, but I was willing to take a chance. And I first went to 2 days of training, and we got these really cool manuals. Here they are. And every single election requires the poll worker to go and train. So one was a manual, and the other one was literally a step-by-step checklist. It's 63 pages. And when I went to the first training, which was 3 hours, that included some classroom instruction on the protocols, and then hands-on instruction with these new poll books, which had only been used, I think, one time prior. So we were introducing a new technology, and they were like little tablets. And I was very familiar with the iPad, so I didn't feel that intimidated about using it, but we had to learn to set them up. And there were so many different procedures about, latching and putting things here and putting things there. And then we had to go set up the new polling machines, and lots of different parts and pieces and canvases and this and that. And and then these manuals that we had to read before the election. And I have to admit, it was information overload. And when I walked in, I was terribly intimidated. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to screw this up. How could I not? Because this is so complicated and the margin for error is huge. But we had a nice team of about 6 people, and it was arranged. There were some newbies and some folks who'd done it a while ago, for a while. So they sort of mentored the newbies, and we had a good age range. We had one high school student. So yes, high school students, you can work the polls, on up to seniors like me. And I was very lucky because I was placed at the Newark Free Library, a wonderful polling site, small district full of people I knew. And we had really very few people come to the primary vote, less than about 100, I'd say. So it was very quiet in there, but I didn't think it was going to be quite as calm during the general. And so we were prepared for voter intimidation. We actually had a meeting with Anthony and also with the Newark police about the possibilities of voter intimidation and how we could handle it. And then we went in for training again. And this time when I sat in the training, it was like deja vu. And I thought, hey, I've done this before, and this is not a big deal. And everything just seemed so much easier. So that when I went in on the day of the training, I really sort of felt a little bit like an old hand, and it was the same team, which was nice. And we had many more voters at the polls. We had a few hundred, but it was clear that a lot of people had voted by absentee ballot. And several people, however, brought their ballots in because they didn't trust the process, the mail system to deliver their ballots on time. And my husband and I were part of that. We ended up driving up to the warehouse in Newcastle, the Department of Elections warehouse, to drop off ours in the ballot box. We had no trouble at all. Everybody wore masks as required, and if they didn't, they put them on when we asked. We didn't have any voter intimidation. We had a few people with signs outside of the, there's an election, going to call it a string that you set up. It's like a perimeter, and there can be no electioneering within it. We had people from the community coming in and delivering coffee and sandwiches, so we were very well taken care of. And as Kay mentioned, we too had a lot of people, thanking us for our service. And I would say overall, I would do this again. I'm very glad I did it. It was a long day, but it was well worth it. And I think every time you do it, it's going to be a little bit easier. And I would encourage younger people to come and do it. I mean, it's great insight into the whole election process. And the thing that I wasn't expecting was how detailed it was and the number of safeguards that are put in place to assure a fair and free election. And it may seem, too much detail, a lot of paperwork, but as our inspector at the site pointed out, it really is necessary in order to guarantee that people are protected and their votes are going to be counted. So I just thank the Department of Elections for the support. And if I sound like a bit of a cheerleader, I guess I am. So,
thank
please
you,
do
Liz.
think about it.
Thank you, Liz. Maureen, do you have anything else to add?
I know we're getting close on time. I think my experience is really similar. I guess had the good fortune of my first election that I worked was the 2018 election. So I got to use the old poll books and be part of that. And then I got to work the referendum in Appoquinimink. And so I got to see what the new electronic poll books would look like. And my only thing I would say about that is that there's benefits to both approaches. We lost connectivity at the school where I was doing the referendum, and we weren't able to check in voters, and it stopped the whole process. So, but I do believe that there were a few instances where in the 2018 election where we signed somebody into the wrong location because of a similar name. So it's kind of pros and cons, but I see it's 11, so.
Well, thank you.
Happy to share my experience anytime with people. It was a lovely experience. I ended up becoming an inspector on my very first time because of a no-show. And I was so supported by the Department of Elections through that whole thing. I was so worried and nervous, and had just great support from my majority and minority judges too. And I am planning to do it again in the 2022 election.
Well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Jill, do you mind if I say just real quick, 10 seconds? I just want to say thank you as well to the poll workers very, very much. And we know that, this year was a lot was thrown at you. I mean, we had, for many people, new equipment, then we had COVID, and then we had everything else on top of that, and lots of, different changes and challenges, but everybody really rose to the occasion. Tremendous. I mean, really just talk about performance under stress. I mean, my Lord. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Well, now we're going to switch gears. And we're going to talk about how we used to vote, voting in 2020, the absentee voting amendment, and then with help from Dwayne Benson from the ACLU, he'll go over the voting bills and how you can help. So you remember this? This is how we used to vote. We went to the polls and we could vote absentee only if we were sick or in the military or on vacation. Very restricted. Then in 2020, due to COVID, we got a taste of other ways to vote. We could vote at the polls. We can vote absentee if no excuse needed. We can vote by mail. We can vote electronically. We can use drop boxes. And as Anthony pointed out, voting this way and having many options increase the number of voters. So now we're going to talk about the no excuse absentee voting constitutional amendment. And as we said, there's specific reasons for voting absentee written in the Delaware Constitution. So in order to change the Delaware Constitution, it requires a 2/3 vote in the House and the Senate for 2 consecutive sessions. And it's preferable that the constitutional amendment is passed prior to initiating a vote by mail bill, so there's no court challenges. HB 73 was introduced in 2019 to remove specific absentee language from the Constitution, and HB 75, the second leg of the constitutional amendment, was introduced in 2021. What happened to the no excuse absentee voting amendment? In 2019 through 2020, the bill was introduced, HB 73, by Representative Benz. In 2019, the bill was voted out of committee by a vote of 5-0 and was passed in the House by a vote of 38-3. The bill initially failed in the Senate, but was also passed on January 6, 2020. This year, Representative Benz again introduced HB 75. This is the second leg of the constitutional amendment. This time, the bill was voted out of committee with a vote of 3-2 instead of 5-0 as it did previously. The 2 representatives that voted against the bill stated that their constituents did not approve of voting by mail given what occurred during the 2020 presidential election. The bill in the House needs 28 votes to pass. It needs 2/3. And there's currently 26 Democrats and 15 Republicans in the House. In the Senate, the bill needs 14 votes to pass, and there's currently 14 Democrats and 7 Republicans in the Senate. So we urge you to contact your legislators to make sure this second leg of the amendment passes. This would be very, very important for voters. Now I want to introduce Dwayne Benson from the ACLU. We'll talk about other voting bills and how you can help pass them.
Awesome. Thank you, Jill. Good morning, League. I'm happy to be here with you all. I put in the chat a little prematurely, but I think you'll see it there. The ACLU has launched its campaign targeting 4 districts in Delaware, Representatives Smith, Shoup, Ramon, and Hensley. If any of you live in any of those 4 districts, I put the links in the chat there. You'll see the last name is at the end of each of those links. So we encourage you to contact your legislator. HB 75 is our priority legislation to get past. This constitutional amendment is so important for other laws in Delaware to be able to be passed to help expand access to voting. We think this is really important. Each of these representatives supported HB 75 or supported this constitutional amendment the last time, as Jill just said, and each of them received over 1,000 mail and absentee votes in 2020. So they have supporters in their district who voted for them by mail and absentee ballot. There are other voting bills happening, though. This isn't the only expansion. And yesterday I was on a panel with some national folks at the ACLU talking about other states and how there's been an onslaught trying to limit access to the polls. And we're kind of lucky in Delaware because we're moving the opposite direction. We're hoping to expand access to the polls in a lot of different ways and really increase the number of registered voters we have and make that a lot easier for folks to do. So HB 25 allows election day registration. This means that a voter can register up to and including on election day. They can show up to the polls beginning in 2022. Early voting will start in Delaware. And so a person who is not previously registered can show up with a form of identification, register and vote all at once. Election can be a one-stop shop. There's really no reason to have these additional barriers and deadlines. Delaware actually has one of the longest time periods that a person must register in advance, and that's one of the longest that's allowable by federal law. It's like 25 days. And so we really want to limit this. This is a barrier to folks being able to register and exercise their right. So HB 25 is sponsored by Representative Dorsey Walker. There's some language in there about the identification requirements that we would like tweaked. We want the identification requirements to be consistent in the Delaware Code. And currently folks who register by mail need to show one form of identification. And we think that that should be consistent for election day registration, same day registration as well. HB 30 moves the state primary date to coincide with the presidential primary, which is the last Tuesday in April. HB 30 is sponsored by Representative Bolden. I think this has been brought up in past legislatures, but we just wanted folks to know about this pending. I saw in the chat whether HB 25 has enough backers to pass. HB 25 has been introduced, but has not yet moved along in the legislative process. We've reached out to Representative Dorsey Walker to talk more about that bill. If anybody is in Representative Dorsey Walker's, I'll put my email in the chat. Be happy to coordinate with you so that we can keep track of what's going on with HB 25. We really are excited about same-day registration. The legislation similar to that is SB 5, which allows automatic voter registration, similar in that it deals with registration. A lot of times folks think automatic registration means everybody is automatically registered. That's what it sounds like. SB 5 uses our Department of Motor Vehicles and other state agencies to help collect information necessary for voter registration and then automatically enrolls folks in that process and then sends them notification to permit them to opt out. What we know is that there are a lot of voters who actually aren't using these state services, who may or may not have a driver's license and may not go to the DMV to enroll. So while automatic voter registration is a great way to increase the number of registered voters, it doesn't include everybody who wants to exercise their right to vote. And so I think a good combination of both automatic voter registration, which is SB 5, sponsored by Senator Kyle Evans-Gay, and HB 25, the same-day registration on election day, that combination really decreases the barriers that we have to registration and increases folks' opportunity to vote. This is particularly important for transient communities, just thinking about students who may have moved, people who are housing insecure and are changing their address more regularly. This has a direct impact for low-income voters and voters of color. And so it's really important that we decrease these barriers. HB 34 is a bill that allows CFER to use state voter registration system with the option for allowing a municipal book of registered voters for natural person, not property owners, to vote as well. And then we're flagging this because certainly the league has expressed support for this bill, but there will be another companion bill that kind of covers all municipalities. And so we're waiting to see how that happens. And this is similar to kind of the theory behind these other voting rights bills, is that you don't want to create an additional layer of registration for separate elections. And so you really want to have a one-stop shop. If you're registered to vote in the state of Delaware in state and federal elections, you should also be registered and eligible to vote in your municipality elections. And then finally, once the constitutional amendment is passed, and we hope that we will find the two Republican supporters in the House to vote to pass that constitutional amendment. There will be a bill for vote by mail introduced. Representative Brady is currently leading that charge and drafting that legislation. We anticipate that it will look a lot like the emergency legislation that was passed last year during the pandemic. And so we'll be looking to see how many drop boxes are made available, how we're going to educate and inform people that no excuse voting is now an opportunity in Delaware. It'll be the first time that Delaware will have no excuse absentee voting that is permanent. The change that happened last year was a temporary fix under the state's emergency powers. So we look forward to the constitutional amendment that would open the door for vote by mail permanent legislation in the state of Delaware. I see the question from Marge about talking about objections to moving the state primary. The ACLU, I think, is agnostic on this, so I can't really speak for my organization on what objections we may have. I think that there are some concerns about who participates in elections based on when they are scheduled. And I think the Representative Bolden's concern here is making sure that there are elections with higher turnout of folks scheduled at the same time. You see similar lower turnout in school board elections because those are scheduled at a separate date than our other state and federal elections. And so, you know, I think it is a barrier to voting when you have multiple election days. Think about the time it takes to schedule the time to go to your poll or vote by mail, request your ballot. All of that is a barrier to voting. And so really, you know, I think that having fewer election days that take voters time out of their lives is probably going to increase access to the polls. And Claire just commented in the chat about some objections here, or some concerns about eliminating the summer as a time to campaign. That's a really strong time for candidates to meet their constituents, to get their platform known by voters. So there's definitely a concern about whether a voter can be informed and educated in time, and then access of campaigns during the winter months to really think about how campaigns traditionally have been run with campaign volunteers knocking on doors and that sort of thing. And it's certainly harder to do that in the winter months than it is in the summer. So we want to loop you all in and make sure that you all are empowered to help pass some of these voting rights bills. Certainly, I've pointed out all of the sponsors in these bills, and please contact them, especially if you are a constituent. Folks need to hear from their constituents. We have started very first Delaware Voting Rights Coalition. We're in the infancy, but the League has been a great partner in participation with some of these early meetings, and we've been happy to have League folks participate with us. Really, this is a voting rights coalition of organizations throughout the state of Delaware that are interested in voting rights and are activating their membership to advocate for voting rights bills in the state. And so it's the first time that we've done this, and we're really trying to figure out what our organizing principles are. And so those of you that are members of other organizations that have voting rights interests and are doing some voting rights work, certainly want to keep our organizations on the same page so we can row this boat together in the right direction. Letters to the editor are always really compelling, particularly, again, if you live in some of these districts where we're targeting HB 75. We're looking for folks who are interested in writing a letter to the editor regarding the exercise of voting by mail or absentee in the 2020 election and how that was important. So we're trying to collect some stories about that. And again, be happy to talk with anyone to help support you in that work in a letter to the editor. Please, please, please contact your legislators, especially if they are the folks that I sent the links to previously in the chat. Again, we're really targeting Representative Smith, Shoup, Ramon, and Hensley. Again, they all supported the House bill last time, the constitutional amendment the last time. They all received absentee voters in 2020. They all have a great reason to support this this time around. And then those links are certainly shareable. They're digital ads online that ACLU has paid for to target folks in each of the districts that we're targeting. We'll also be sending text messages. We're working with Common Cause, has sent an action alert out statewide to collect folks' signatures for this, and Delaware United Network Delaware are also working on this.
Thank you, Dwayne. Any questions?
Jill, excuse me. You remember there was a question at our last committee meeting about people who selected absentee voting and wanted that to become permanent, but we weren't sure. Perhaps Anthony could address that.
Oh, that's a good question. Anthony, you're still there?
Oh yeah, I'm on mute here. Yes. Well, the last vote by mail, since it was time limited, there was no permanent option available, since that bill expressly, as was written, expired on January 12th of this year. So there was no provision. The longest duration was to opt in for all elections that year, or any elections up to the point where the bill was still in effect. So yeah, but perhaps that, again, if that's the desire, for the bill authors, drafters, they could certainly, include that if that's their, their preference.
Any other questions? I like to just end with discussing other volunteer opportunities with voting in the league. We have a huge voter education and registration effort. We go to high schools, libraries, and community events and help register. We don't get that many people to register because most people are registered, but we do have to do a lot of education. If you go to the high schools, it's pretty eye-opening. The students sometimes don't know what a primary is. They don't know what a party is. So you have to do a lot of education. And during last year, voters were very confused with the changing voting environment. So we did a lot of webinars, and it was very helpful. So we do need volunteers for that. That would be great. Another thing we do to help voters is we do a Vote 411 online voter guide, where we have the candidates' backgrounds and we have their views on certain issues. Then you could look side by side and see what the candidates' views are. And I'm happy to report that in the coming year, we're partnering with Delaware Online and Gannett to come up with one set of questions so the candidates aren't bombarded by all these surveys. And we'll work with them to come up with questions, and the Department of Election is actually going to, they're actually going to distribute those questions. So that's a great thing to do. And any other final thoughts before we leave?
There's a question in here from Joanne. I just lost it. She was interested in knowing whether or not a request for permanent absentee status, not just vote by mail, was practiced in 2020.
I think I understood the question. A permanent absentee status is always an option as it currently stands. Based on particular reasons, someone can complete an absentee application, and if they are choosing one of the specified reasons, for example, on the form, they could, if they qualify, choose permanent, and then as long as they do that, then they're maintained permanent status going forward until we're informed otherwise. We would never take them off of that status.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for attending. I really appreciate you coming, and I hope you come to the other League Day sessions that will be held on Wednesdays in the month of March. So have a good day. Have a good, happy St. Patty's Day.